All right. So let's start lecture. How's everyone's spring break? Anyone do anything cool or no? All right. Well, I went back home for SoCals and like there's a guy called the Corn Man. I don't know if you know, like near the LA area. Basically, he opens at like 11:30 every night. And then he gets I don't know if you guys know what elote is, but he makes a elote and there's always like a long line. So I went to go visit him down in SoCal for spring break. But besides that, I didn't do too much. But anyways, let's start. So for this week, we are on week 9. Some announcements right now. We have our main project 2 due today. We have group project forms. So that's just for matchmaking, right? Whether you guys want to do something by yourself or do it in a group at least 3 people. Please fill out the form by today. If you don't, either we're gonna make you solo, put you with someone, and that might affect your grade. And additionally, you're gonna have to make a little design doc, right? It's just a quick like, hey, say what you're doing, what type of app you're making, right? We're gonna put out the final project requirements soon too. But make a design doc indicating what you guys are gonna do for your final project, and we're gonna make a little grade scope thing open. That's gonna be due next Friday. All right. So for today's agenda, we're gonna be talking about Swift data. But before we talk about Swift data, we got to talk about the kind of problems of our apps right now, right? So when we create our apps, right? Let's say you create an app like a to-do scheduler, class planner, right? All those kind of like is it class planner or the finance one, right? If you were right now to test it, and we can test it right now. If you were to if you were to like go in the simulator, exit the app, and go out, you would see that the data on your app is actually not saved. So let me bring out the little demo right now. So here's just one app, for example. If I was to if I was to put information in that app, right? Right now, if I was to turn off my phone or delete the app as a whole, all the information would not be saved. So go right here, should be this demo. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. Okay. So give me a second. If I was to like add a store, right? What's that new one called? Sanction? If I was to add Samchin in and then it's on Bancroft. And then let's say we get 5 stars, even though it's not really worth that much. If I was to turn off the simulator right now, right? Turn off the simulator. In theory, right, we wouldn't be able to save that review, right? So if I load it back up again, it's not going to be there. And I don't think I hit the save button. So let me try one more time. Samchin. I'm just going to type in Telegraph. Let's give it 1 star. Save it, right? It's right here. But like turning off the simulator is like turning off your phone, right? Every time you turn off your phone, you don't want like all your information to be deleted, right? You don't want an app that only like functions like you don't want an app that only functions like on the app. You can't save anything, you can't have data, you can't have persistence. So that's kind of our main problem right now. So that kind of creates a lot of limits, right? We can't create apps such as notes, financial apps, etc. So how are we able to save data? With SwiftData. Right? So data persistence is just a simple term of saying that your phone is storing information, like, or no, your app is storing information on the phone, right? If you think about the Notes app or Good Notes, right? If you write something on it, type something on it, or put any sort of information into the app, it should be able to save it on the next, like even though you delete it, even though you kind of like do that thing where you destroy on like the back end, or like you hold it and like you go up, the app should still have all that information, right? You don't want a notes app that doesn't keep track of the things you're writing. That'd be just a pain. But before we talk about SwiftData, right? SwiftData is actually built on top of this thing called core data. And what core data is just basically the older paradigm of iOS data persistence, right? Core data was kind of, I think it's, yeah, core data is the predecessor of SwiftData. But the reason why we started creating SwiftData is that core data didn't really like have that same intuitiveness that SwiftData had, right? It didn't really function similar to sorry, it didn't really function similar to Swift UI. So, around 2023, they felt that they needed a new data persistence that feels very similar to Swift UI. That gives us SwiftData, right? Introduced in WWC 23, SwiftData was meant to kind of be this like intuitive way of having data persistence in your app, right? It kind of has that same like feeling, the way you kind of declare objects and like classes is very similar to Swift UI. They both kind of have the same philosophy that instead of treating your data as data, you're treating your data as objects, right? And we'll kind of see a little bit from now. What do you mean by treating your data as objects is like you're making a little class for your data and kind of accessing it with object-oriented programming. So Swift data is the kind of like evolved version of core data. It still uses aspects of core data, and actually it is compatible with. So Swift data and core data are compatible with each other. It's just that Swift data takes advantage of macros and schemas, right? And a little review. The best way to think of it is a macro is just kind of like this tag that you can add on your code, right? And it does a bunch of stuff on the back end, right? Most of the code is compiled, or most of the code is created at compile time, right? And the best way to kind of think about it is you just add this little keyword to your like to a piece of your class, right? And then Swift does all the stuff behind it. You don't need to really worry about it. You just need to know that the macro has it covered. So right here is the app model macro. And let me kind of show you an example, right? If we were to, there we go. If we were to kind of go to Xcode right now, right? If you were to do the same thing, app model class, I would just call it random, right? And then just do that for now, right? If you did this thing called power clicking, right? And you hit the model, you're able to see kind of all the code in the back that's dealing with, right? So it's dealing with the persistence model, observable, all this stuff in the background that you don't really need to worry about. That is kind of the power of Swift data, is that it's taking advantage of these macros to kind of make coding a lot easier for you. So now, so here's an example of a kind of Swift data model, right? As you can see, it's just a normal class. All you do is you have what variables you want to save, and then you have an initializer function, right? So similar to Python, it has the init function, and it says, hey, when you want to create this coffee object, right, you simply need to put in the brand, price, and rating. And what are those things? Those are strings, doubles, and ints. And right here, since we add the app model macro for us, right, it creates all that like persistence code for us. So now by adding that, we know that our data has a like persistence to it, right? If I was to create an app centered around coffee or rating coffee, this class is actually going to be able to save into our data storage. And a little bit more about macros too, right? So you can add more of these macros to your model, right? So if you wanted to have your model be unique, right? Let's say I go back and the brand has to be unique, right? I can add the attribute macro, put it dot unique. And now anytime you put in the brand, it's going to compare to the other models and make sure that, hey, there's no to the same brand, right? Or to the same whatever you want. You can have transient, and transient's like, hey, maybe you have a variable that you keep in track called time, right? That doesn't need to be persistent. Like we don't care. Like maybe when the user adds his information, we don't care about what the time is. It might be useful for when we're actually using the app, but that is information we don't need to save. You might have the at transient macro. So macros are very useful, right? They kind of allow your models to have more diversity and like functionality to it that you might want to add. For now, we're just gonna kind of keep it simple with using a at model. All right. So model containers, right? So we're saying that stuff's getting saved, right? And you're asking like, where's stuff getting saved, right? I'm having maybe my notes app, right? Where's my journal? Where's my words being saved into, right? That is being saved in the model container. So the model container is essentially kind of like you have your context, right? Things that are changing, and then you have your model container, right? And every time you're calling certain things, it will then save the changes you have into the model container. The best way to kind of think of it is like Microsoft Word, right? You're able to type things on Microsoft Word, and maybe you write like a whole essay, maybe you write yeah, pictures to it and whatnot. But back then, maybe when everyone's around like elementary and middle school, right? I don't think Microsoft Word had the automatic save feature. So you had to manually hit that save button. So similar to persistence, right? If we didn't hit that save button, all the information that we wrote, your entire essay, maybe you had a homework assignment that you forgot to save, because it all just disappear when you hit the X button. So using some keywords, right? The model container is kind of like the storage on Microsoft Word, right? We had to hit that save button to indicate, hey, we don't want our changes to be gone. While the context itself is like us kind of writing onto that document. Right. And now going with models, right? There is relations. So here's some like kind of good ways to think about relationship. There's a one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. So I think the easiest way to kind of think of it is with movies, right? So if you have a director, right? A director is not only stuck to one movie. He doesn't need to, he can only not like he's not forced to only create one movie, right? A director can create a bunch of movies, right? So a one to many could be there's a director model, right? And he has another model called movies that all kind of connect to him. There could be one to one, right? Or like for example, your driver's license. If you have more than one driver's license, that's most likely not good. Same thing with passports. So every person is supposed to have one driver's license, one ID, should. But so that would be something that's one to one, right? They're kind of like meant to only interact with each other. And then many to many is like things that can have, well, obviously many to many, right? Once again, going back to actors, right? An actor isn't limited to one movie, right? You always see it that like there's probably one actor, and then for some reason that year he's like featured in two other movies or maybe a bunch of TV shows while he's recording a different movie or filming a different movie, right? You can kind of have this many to many relationship. And going back, right? These relationships are taking advantage of the relationship macro. So here's an example, right? We would have a movie model, right? Put some variables in it, indicate what our movie model should have, right? And then, as a kind of a implicit way, we can say the movie model may have a director model attached to it, right? So we say var director, director, optional, because it's guaranteed that a movie might not have a director to it. But then in our director, right, we can have a array of movies, right? All the different movies that he's been associated with. So if you just use the optional, right, you're just saying that the model itself can actually, it has a chance. Or like by putting in the variables, right, you're indicating that it's connected to the director's model and the director is connected to the movement model, right? That's something just, kind of like by reading the code, you should understand. But you can kind of create this implicit, like explicit sort of a relationship using the relations macros, right? So you can say like, hey, maybe you can't create a movie model without creating a director model, or you can't delete the director's model because it has child of movie models, right? By using the relationship macros, it gives more sort of like control to what you actually want your data models to do. So for this one, right, it says like instead of if we were to delete the director, right, we need to delete its child, right? Without the director, those movies wouldn't exist. So that's kind of a like a usage of the like relationship macro. Yeah. And then when you create like so basically to have your view model be activated, right? If you were to create the models, right, and then create the functions that actually interact with these models, interact with the data, you actually wouldn't see the changes happen until you created the model container. So the simple way to inject a model container is simply going to in your little file, it's going to say app name slash like app. You simply just go to that giant one or like kind of go to like the window group view, right? Window group is just kind of like an indicator on how your apps look. And then you kind of hit the dot model container and whatever model you want, right? So I have a random app with a random model. If I'm just dealing with one model, right, then I would simply just have it by itself. Now, if I have brackets over it, that's indicating that I have multiple different models. And let's say I have a random and it has random child. I will also need to kind of indicate, like in the model container, that hey, we're also using random and random child. So there is a slight, yeah. So it's not that your models won't work. Your changes won't be reflected unless you have a model container. So in the little demo I will show you, I kind of saw it last night. If I didn't have it, for example, I had it the preview on the when I hit the simulator, it worked. But because I didn't put like a model container in the preview, I wasn't actually able to see my changes into the context view. So it's not that the models won't work, is that well, the simplest way you won't see your like data changes unless you have a model container. Yes. So yeah, going back, right? We it does work behind you because you have the context, right? Which is you actively showing the changes. And then later on, we're going to show these functions that actually like display, like that retrieve the model from that little container or delete and add models to the container. So you actually kind of brought in the next serve thing. So let me rush through it. Oh, and then one thing, this usually works if you are just working with an iPhone app only. So there is a kind of like a limited way of just doing that sort of dot model container. And this only works if you're following view hierarchy, right? So once you add like a view builder or certain things, this might not work best. All right. So now going with querying, right? So kind of like what we were talking about earlier, right? How are we able to show these changes? We are showing these changes with the at query, right? And what at query does is it's going to our model, right? Our persistent data, and then we're calling at query and it's fetching all that data, like all the data related to that model type and putting it into our UI. So that's how it's doing it. We have to call like a command to actually retrieve the data or put the data into the model. Yeah, you have to like inject the model to the view that like you are injecting the model container into the view that you're interacting with. That's actually using the data persistence, if that makes sense. Yeah, I'll do the demo and then just tell me where you get lost. But yeah, essentially what querying is allowing us to do is it just connects our kind of our view to the model container, right? And the amazing thing about query is that it's able to take advantage of predicates and filtering. And one thing is if you just call at query by itself, it's just gonna fetch everything without actually like indicating. So that's the whole point of what predicates and filtering is. Just as a little basic, right? If you want to create like a list, right, of people that have or people models, right? You just did at query. All that would just show everyone that you added. There is no certain like order or kind of like specification on the type of people that you're adding. While if you did like if you had query and you put sort, right, it would do it by the alphabetical order of names. You could do age. So that's kind of like the little like specifications you can add to query. Now we're dealing with predicates, right? So the idea of predicates is they're basically in the simplest way to describe it, predicates are just these booleans. If you add a check, right? If you add a predicate check with the model that you're checking, it's able to kind of since it knows what your model is, right? It's able to kind of see the variables that it has and like information you have access to. And then what it does is you can create this check saying that like, hey, I only want to be able to show models that have this sort of like these checklists or these qualifications, these requirements. So like a best way to describe it is, let's say we're going back to people's age, right? I would only want to show people with J names, or I would only want to show people that are over 32. So predicates allow us to kind of filter data. You can create more dynamic predicates, right? So like, for example, if you, look over here, right? For example, if you have like a sliding bar, right, which is kind of the third one that I'm showing. If you have a sliding bar, you can actually change the like the ages that you want to see, right? So, hey, like I have a database of users from 0 years old to 100. I don't, I can change the minimum age of people I want to see using a sliding bar. So that's how you can kind of create a dynamic predicate. Other kind of like simple predicates you can create. So let's go a predicate, like you can kind of create a predicate into a variable and then use that to reference in your query filter. But a predicate is simply just like a filter that you can add to your query search. So query would kind of fetch all the data, while predicate would then filter the data that you see in your UI. And some limitations with predicates is that you can't really use too complex. So it kind of works how like true or false. You can use all those sort of operations, but there's not really, there is still like some limitations to what predicate can kind of like search within your models. Yeah. So now if you actually, so this is where like interacting with your model is, right? So unless you, one thing that's like interesting about SwiftUI, right, is that it will automatically save all the data that you're calling, right? So if you were to do dot insert, right, new trip, or dot delete, new trip, it would do it automatically, right? Every time you're interacting with the model container, it will kind of just automatically put data into it and take it out and save that like data or save your container to reflect the changes that you made recently. Now, if you did try context.save, then it would do it manually, right? It would kind of stop and like it would kind of just like confirm that you're saving it. So does that kind of like explain how like the data and the model is kind of interacting with each other? Okay. So now myself a lot of time. Oh, we're gonna do a little code demo, right? So right, the kind of main goal is I want an app that's like this, where this is kind of like the end goal, right? Where here, if I was to add like share T and then give like a 2 and then put it on Telegraph and then maybe add, oop, oh, I know why. Oh, wait. Okay, I know why this is not showing. Let me fix the code. I was messing around. I added a predicate to the filtering, so it's actually gonna not show anything I give it to. So if I replace it, okay. Now if I add share T and I give like a 1, okay, it should show, right? So let's add Ascension. That was all right. Bancroft. What's another one? Haiti? I actually like Haiti a lot. What's our like Samchin versus Haiti, right? Haiti a little better. Samchin's kind of, or do people like Samchin a lot more? Haiti's down. Shoot, it's in downtown. It's on like Shattuck, right next to shoot, it's right next to the Target. Not right next to it, but like if you were walking into the Target, it would be the left of it. But then you got Haiti. I'll give it that 5, right? And the whole idea is now if I was to close the app and then run it again, right? These piece of the data should stay within here. So ooh, either I change something or something's going on. Um, oh wait, no, deleting it actually should. If I accidentally change something that mess with it. Um, well, in the simplest way, the data should be persisting. But yeah, let's code into our demo, right? If we kind of look into my little notepad, right? The demo version of it, right? We don't have any Swift data. We don't have any Swift data imports, right? We're simply just using we're just simply using structs and classes that kind of store the information for a little bit. And then after we exit the app or kind of turn off our phones, it should be gone. So going to this, right? I'm gonna make a new Swift file, right? If you create like a Swift project, right? They usually have like a suggestion saying, hey, what sort of data you want to use, right? So if I kind of say storage, you have the option of core data and Swift data. Usually I try to like avoid using the built-in Swift data because they kind of give you a lot and it's very confusing even for me. So I usually avoid it and then just try to, go into create my own file. So over here, right, we have a sort of my Swift data being stored here, right? I wanted to create a model, right? So I just do add model, add that little keyword. Oh, but before that, what am I missing? Like this is not really highlighting blue, so it's indicating that it doesn't exist. Like this keyword's not in our, this keyword isn't like within use. We're missing the import Swift data, right? So if you want to use Swift data, you have to do import Swift data. Now the app model is becoming blue. Depending on what theme you have, right, it's going to be a different color, but you want to make sure that the color pops up. Additionally, we're going to add foundation. Believe foundation is associated with predicate. Yeah, I can test it right here. So predicate, and that was a hit. Predicate, let's do boba. Oh, I'll test it later after because I think I need to make the boba class. So right here, we're making our little boba shop, right? And then kind of like looking at what the UI my app had, right? The boba shop simply had name, address, rating, favorite drink, notes. I think I even had date added. So from there, I'll simply just do name, string, bar address, string, and then all the other things, right? Rating is going to be int, bar favorite drink, be a string, bar notes, string two, and bar. Okay. So after I made my kind of like the variables I'm going to use, right? what is it like? What's the error that I'm getting, right? What am I kind of missing in this model? All right. Oh, yeah. No, no, no. Think of like 61A classes and think of England in it. So we're missing our, it says right here, we're missing our initializer, right? So once again, the idea of philosophy of Swift data is that we're treating data as an object, right? We want to create these objects that store our data, right? So we need to have a init function. So then it's simple, right? We just do the same exact thing we had. So address, you're taking a string, and then rating, you're taking a int. So this should all be 61A review, if I'm clear. Or yeah, if I'm correct. I remember doing this. And then for date added, Swift just has a date class that allows you to kind of just like it'll look at your phone's clock and be able to kind of gather information on today's date. So I'll simply just do self names equals name, right? So this should all kind of bring back memories. Then do self dot address equals address, and I'm just gonna let that do it for me. So boom, right? I'm not getting any errors anymore. This should all work. I think, and then additionally, right, I can add like just like for fun, right? What sort of like connections do you have to a boba shop, right? Do you have like let's say we never make another model, right? We can make a model boba drink. And instead of like having the user add a drink, right? We can create like another model for it to interact with. And then maybe create like a sort of like force relation, right? We can do relations, relationship, inverse, or like add like a delete rule, right? We can have like an inverse, minimum model count. Maybe like a boba shop should only have 5 drinks that you're allowed to add to like to that review and whatnot. So you can create more than one model, right? But then once again, when you create more than one model, so let me just fill this up with like name, string, and then create the initializer name, string, true. Nope. Oh, and then forgot that stuff that names equals to name. And then maybe create the relation of shop to boba shop that. Right. And then the little question marks indicating that like, hey, there might be a boba shop that's connected to, might not. But we're just gonna say self dot shop equals shop. Right. So now going to the injection, right? The injections kind of have one for the app, right? Which is like when you hit the kind of play button, you want to be able to kind of see your model view container. So you just type in model container 4, and then maybe add over here. Oh, no, it's giving me a random one, like boba shop dot self. But then let's say I want to add the boba drinks, right? So I can type in boba drinks dot self too, right? So you need to indicate to it. Hmm. Oh, I'm putting it in the wrong spot. I'm outside the scene, so now I'll put it back in. Should be fine. And what is it giving me errors on? Maybe the commas are messing with it. Hold on. If I just do both shop that stuff. Bar window group. Yeah. I'm looking here for. Oh, right. Am I not? Shop. Some number. This should work. Model. Okay, I'll leave that for now because I can show in the preview too. That's super weird. Probably forgot to do something. Let me remove this. Oh, wait. It might be because I didn't do the file name. So let's do model container for boba data. That's all. Leave for now. It's either, yep, I'll leave for now. All right. So now we want to add these sort of changes to our content view, right? So we kind of look right now. We have a little thing that kind of like stores our shops, right? So this little array kind of stores our shops. Maybe something that's important is remove, right? We can maybe use the dot delete that with our model container. Maybe instead of destruct, we can simply refer to our model. So let's start at the very top, right? One thing that we can do right off the gate is kind of remove the shops right here. And saying in an app state, we can make an app query and then have it sorted from the date added, right? So we want the most recent thing that kind of be there. So then we want the order reverse, right? So we want the most recent to kind of appear first. And then we have our variable shops, which takes in an array of book shops. Nope. And then one thing I forgot to add is import SwiftData. And then I don't know why it's getting, oh, leave that for now. It should be fine. Yep, perfect. So no more errors. Now, if we kind of scroll down, right? The main thing that's kind of interacting with all of our stuff, right, is this sort of like, I believe it's the ad shop detail view, right? So this ad shop detail view, or this ad shop view right here is this guy, that little sheet that pops up. So instead of right here, right? Instead of just creating a simple shop struct, we can kind of go down here and then, create a shop object. So now we can just say let new shop equal, oh, should be the same thing. So actually, one thing I'm going to do is delete this struct right here. We don't need it anymore. And then go down here, instead of saying shop, it should be boba shop. And now you kind of see how everything kind of turned green is simply using the model that we had. I'm just going to do this too. It's going to use the model that we had right here and then create a boba shop object to kind of store our data. And then now you're kind of asking, wait, how do we actually interact with our model container? So you need to create this at environment keyword right here. And then tell it that, hey, we're working with the model context, right? Remember, the model context is kind of showing like all the changes that are happening. And there we need to create this model context sort of variable. What's it gonna be this? You need to create this model context variable, right? In order to kind of show that, hey, we are gonna like add stuff, delete stuff, right? We need to actually, hit the little save button. So also on top of here, right, we're gonna go down. See if I can find it. and then add a little environment model context, var model context. And then we're just gonna ignore the errors for now. Because no, most likely. These are just coming from me deleting things. All right. Nope. And then just take this out. And then instead of doing like creating like a save function, right? We can just then do model context right here and then do dot insert. So this is us taking advantage of the sort of insert function, right? So model context, I think it was not, should be green. Model context, insert, new shop, and boom, right? So now right here, this is kind of how our stuff's being saved. And then disable name, boom. Let me try it here. Do I still need that on save button? No. Okay, I'll let that be for now. So right here, this is an example of kind of like adding stuff to your model container, right? Another way to kind of show, and then now we kind of have to create this delete function, right? So because my app uses those little like, you can able to slide to the left and then hit the delete button. It's gonna look a little weird, but this is kind of the more, just forget how this function, like the specifics of this function, and understand the generalness of it. That if you just do a delete shop, right? Delete shop at offset, right? Because the offsets are kind of each of the little like H stacks. And then do index for offset. This is just a bunch of code because of my specific UI. Let's shop. The more important thing is that we just call, once again, we call the model context and then hit the delete button. So do dot delete, right? And now, because of this, automatically it should just go into like our context is kind of our UI, kind of messing with things, right? But unless we kind of hit these buttons, it's not gonna go into the model container and actually change it. So now that should be it. Let's look at the errors that's happening. So I'm gonna do clean folder build. I'll double check everything. Code itself should be fine. Oh, this is giving me an error because I have this mixed up. So now this should go away. Yeah, let's load. I think, oh, what the heck's going on? What's this? Um, I need to separate it. Oh, wait, I'm not calling it. Should be on delete. I should do, instead of dot remove, it should be, hold on. right here. So this is what's messing with it. It should just be, oh, dude, I feel like that caused a bigger mess. Perform, delete checks. Oh, okay, hold on. Let's see if I can fix this real quick. Oh, okay. It's just some tiny thing about the UI. Hold on. I'm just gonna copy this. This should fix this guy right here. Copy that. That's awesome. Oh, okay. There we go. I forgot the S over here. That's why this is freaking out. And offset. Okay, well, we don't have a lot of time, but basically yeah, let me just go through this quick. Gist of this is Swift did let me give the code first and then I give my summary. Code should be April. And then I'll just kind of give the summary from here, right? The summary is if you want to have kind of local persistence, right? So the limitations of Swift data is that you're not able to connect to the cloud, right? So all the stuff that's saved on your phone, right, won't be able to save on a different person's phone, right? If you want to use kind of like cross-platform stuff. Also, is the QR code working? Okay, just making sure. So there is limitations of Swift data, right? With Swift data, you're not able to kind of have cross-platform, right? So you're not able to have Android data saved. You're not able to use maybe someone has a the Chinese one with a white Hunwei phone, right? If someone has that, they're not able to kind of access the information on your app. So there is limitations. One way to get past that is kind of using like a third-party source called Firebase, which we will teach you next week. And additionally, I think, but with Swift data, it gives you a lot of like flexibility, right? Using querying macros are actually very easy. Didn't have enough time to show it, right? But the predicates allow kind of great ways to filter things, and you can actually get them very specific to saying, hey, like only filter names with this specific, like, or only filter people with this specific criteria. And additionally, with Swift data, you're able to kind of upgrade and use CloudKit or basically you're able to use Swift data to kind of connect it to the cloud and you're able to kind of have that cloud storage. So Swift data is just the beginning. It gets very complicated. There's actually a lot you can learn from it. And we only taught you like the very basics, but hope you enjoy. And we hope to see a lot of you guys' apps kind of have data persistence. All right. Have a good day. Bye.